Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you new science fiction stories, a new world, a new adventure. And yes, there is no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So let's start this journey, and please subscribe my channel if you like the stories and press the bell icon for the latest updates. Let's have a story. Okay.
The galaxy's most prestigious military academy doesn't teach you how to survive betrayal by your own species. It doesn't prepare you for the moment when everything you believed about honor and duty turns to ash in your mouth. And it certainly doesn't warn you that the human sitting 3 rows back, the one everyone calls the charity case, might be the only thing standing between civilization and the void. They should have listened when she tried to tell them. The Valerian Imperial Academy occupied 17 floating platforms above Kesh Prime, each one a monument to 4,000 years of military excellence. The architecture alone was designed to intimidate. Crystalline spires that caught the light of 3 suns, training grounds where gravity could be adjusted to crush or elevate, halls lined with the names of legends who'd shaped galactic history. Kael'thas stood at the edge of Platform 7, his secondary arms folded behind his back in the traditional Valerian stance of contemplation, watching the human struggle through basic zero-gravity maneuvering. She tumbled. Again, her limbs moved like she was fighting the absence of gravity instead of working with it. 17 seconds, announced Proctor Shunvar, her mandibles clicking with what might have been amusement or disgust. Hard to tell with a Rothkai. Cadet Reeves, that is 11 seconds slower than a Valerian hatchling. The human, Reeves, Maya Reeves according to the roster, caught herself against a handhold. Her face was red. Humans did that when exerting themselves, flushed with blood that made their skin change color like a mood indicator they couldn't control. Inefficient biology. Again, she said. Not asked. Said. Kael'thas found that interesting. The third time someone told you that you performed worse than an infant, most species started making excuses. Humans were supposed to be emotional creatures, prone to defensiveness. The dossiers said so. She pushed off, tumbled, caught herself at 19 seconds this time. Perhaps Shunvar clicked. The diplomatic corps made an error including your species in the academy program. There are other ways to participate in galactic civilization that don't require military aptitude. The human hung there in the zero-gravity chamber, upside down relative to where Kael'thas stood. Her dark hair floated around her face in a way that would have been comic if not for her eyes. They were brown. Unremarkable brown. But they were tracking Shunvar with the kind of focus Kael'thas had only seen in apex predators evaluating prey. I'll run it again, Reeves said. She ran it 43 more times that session. By the end, she'd shave her time down to 14 seconds. Still pathetic by Academy standards. A Valerian could navigate that course in 4. But Kael'thas noted that she hadn't stopped until the proctor called time, and that she was the last cadet to leave the chamber even though her hands were shaking and her skin had gone from red to an unhealthy pale. He made a mental note. It probably meant nothing. Humans were stubborn. The galaxy knew this. They fought a 17-year war against the Kresh Dominion over a mining colony that wasn't even strategically valuable, just because they decided it was the principle of the thing. Stubborn and stupid often looked the same from a distance. The Academy sorting worked on a simple principle: excellence rises. Over the course of the first term, cadets were evaluated across 47 different metrics. Combat capability, strategic thinking, logistics, engineering, xenopsychology, tactical adaptation. The algorithm was elegant, designed by the finest minds in the Valerian Empire over centuries of refinement. By week 6, Maya Reeves ranked 1,847th out of 1,850 cadets. Kael'thas saw her every day in Advanced Kinetic Combat Theory, a class that was advanced in name only because it assumed you'd already mastered basic combat. She sat in the back, never asked questions, took notes in a physical notebook with a primitive writing implement instead of using a neural link like every other species. Archaic, muttered Zixandra, the Tlori in the seat next to him. Her iridescent scales shifted colors with her contempt. Why do they even bother? The human worlds have nothing to offer the Academy except political optics. Kael'thas had read the human dossiers. Earth and its colonies represented less than 0.003% of the galaxy's military strength. Their technology was evolutionary rather than revolutionary. They'd barely figured out FTL drives when first contact happened. They had no significant natural resources the galaxy wanted. No unique genetic advantages. Nos unique capabilities. What they had was location. Their system sat along 3 major trade routes and had somehow avoided being conquered during the Dominion expansion wars through a combination of diplomatic maneuvering and what the official reports called unexpected resistance. Kael'thas suspected it was mostly luck. The Kresh had bigger problems when they reached human space and didn't want to waste resources on a backwater. So the diplomatic corps had offered the humans a seat at the table. Academy slots. A gesture of goodwill that cost the Valerian Empire nothing and bought them a buffer zone of grateful primitives. Cadet Reeves, Professor Krell 9 called out. The Drac warrior stood 3 meters tall, even hunched over, his scales bearing scars from actual combat rather than training simulations. Scenario 7. You are outnumbered 4-1 by hostiles with superior firepower. Your options? The human looked up from her notebook. Retreat and regroup. The class erupted in clicking, chittering laughter. Elaborate, Krell 9 said, his voice carrying the kind of flatness that preceded a teaching moment where someone got intellectually eviscerated. I don't have enough information to make a tactical assessment, Reeves said. What species? What terrain? What's my objective? What resources do I have? Are the hostiles coordinated or opportunistic? Is this a defensive or offensive scenario? The laughter stopped. In actual combat, Reeves continued, her voice steady. Retreat is the correct answer to insufficient intelligence. Charging in because you're outnumbered is how you turn a bad situation into a massacre. Krell 9 stared at her for a long moment. The scenario assumes standard combat conditions. There's no such thing as standard combat conditions. That's literally what the word combat means, chaos with weapons. Someone in the front row made a choking sound. Krell 9's scales rippled, a Drac expression Kael'thas had learned to read as contemplation. You would retreat. I would gather intelligence and then make an informed decision. If the objective is worth the risk and I can identify a tactical advantage, I'd press. If not, I preserve my forces for a battle I can win. And if your orders are to hold position, then I'd dig in and make them pay for every meter, but I'd still want to know what I'm fighting before they arrive. The professor moved on to another cadet, but Kael'thas noticed he didn't call Reeves' answer wrong. Just different. The rankings updated weekly. By week 12, Maya Reeves had climbed to 1,823rd place. Kael'thas found himself watching her more than he cared to admit. It wasn't attraction. Valorians didn't think of other species that way, and humans were particularly ill-suited to their aesthetic preferences. It was the same interest he might have in watching a primitive species use tools. Curiosity about something that shouldn't work, but did. She failed physical conditioning tests. Her neuroplasticity scores were abysmal. Humans couldn't interface directly with AI systems like most spacefaring species. She ranked in the bottom 10th percentile for zero-gravity maneuvers, weapons proficiency, and tactical simulations. But she never quit a drill, never submitted a half-finished assignment, never missed a class. And in the areas where raw physical capability didn't matter, strategic planning, logistics coordination, resource allocation, she was pulling scores in the upper quartile. She's cheating, Zixander declared during mess period. Has to be. No human is clever enough to outthink a Valerian strategic AI. The AI flagged her work, Kael'thas said. Clean. Then, she's lucky. Kael'thas had watched Maya Reeves run the zero-gravity course 60 times before she improved. Luck wasn't what kept someone trying that long. The breakthrough came during week 15 in Professor Venkat's resource logistics class. The scenario was simple. supply a forward operating base through hostile territory with limited transport capacity. Most cadets optimized for speed. Kael'thas himself had plotted a route that minimized exposure time to enemy fire zones. Reeve's solution was bizarre. She divided the supply runs into 7 separate convoys using different routes, different timing, different cargo priorities. It was inefficient by every standard metric, took longer, used more fuel, required more coordination. Explain, Venkat said, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. The efficient solution is also the predictable solution, Reeves said. She pulled up her simulation on the holo display, her primitive manual interface lagging behind the thoughts of the other cadets. If I was defending that territory, I'd identify the most logical supply route and mine it. Wait for the enemy to do the obvious thing. 1 convoy, big target, predictable timing. She zoomed in on the map. 7 smaller convoys across different routes means the enemy has to spread their interdiction forces. They can maybe hit 1 or 2, but the others get through. It's a numbers game. The goal isn't to be perfect. It's to be unpredictable enough that you achieve your objective. You sacrifice efficiency for unpredictability, Venkat observed. I sacrifice optimal outcomes for acceptable outcomes with higher probability. In a real war, I'll take guaranteed 70% success over possible 100% success. Kael'thas realized he was leaning forward. Venkat clicked his mandibles. Unorthodox. Also correct. The enemy did mine the primary routes in the simulation. Cadet Reeves' convoys took 23% more time, but delivered 89% of supplies intact. The median result for this scenario is 34% delivery due to ambush losses. Meyer Reeves had just beaten 400 cadets who were physically, technologically, and intellectually superior to her by the simple expedient of assuming the enemy wasn't stupid. That night, Kael'thas reviewed her entire academy record. Really reviewed it, not just glanced at the rankings. The pattern emerged like a constellation you'd been staring at without seeing. She was learning. Not just studying, actually learning at a rate that shouldn't be possible. Her zero-gravity time had improved from 19 seconds to 9 seconds over 15 weeks. Her weapon scores had jumped to full grade brackets. Her strategic planning had evolved from textbook regurgitation to genuine innovation. The human brain was supposed to be limited, locked into evolutionary patterns that made them reactive rather than adaptive. But Reeves was rewriting her own neural pathways through sheer repetition, and the Academy's teaching algorithms that worked perfectly for species with mental plasticity weren't designed to track someone who learned through brute force trial and error. The rankings updated at the end of week 15. Meyer Reeves, 1,445th place. 400 slots in a single term. The Academy's historical records showed the largest term-over-term jump in rankings was 93 slots by a Valerian prodigy who went on to become fleet commander. No one was paying attention because she was still in the bottom quartile, still obviously outmatched by every physical and mental metric that mattered. Still nothing. Kael'thas started paying very close attention. The first attack happened during week 23. Not on the Academy, an actual attack 3 systems away on a Valerian research outpost. Pirates, according to initial reports. The Kresh Remnant, according to intelligence analysis. A coordinated strike that took out the orbital defenses and killed everyone on the station before vanishing back into deep space. The Academy went on lockdown protocol. Not because the attack posed a direct threat, but because that's what you did when an enemy demonstrated they could hit Valerian assets without warning. Kael'thas was in advanced tactical command when the alert came through. Professor Mrelax, a veteran of the Dominion Wars who'd lost his lower arms to a plasma grenade and never bothered to get them regenerated, pulled up the tactical data on the main display. 3 days ago, he said, his voice carrying the flatness of someone reporting information they found personally offensive. The Vestige Station. 47 personnel. Xenobiology research facility studying Kresh genetic patterns. Wiped out. The display showed wreckage. What was left of the station was a debris field that told a story Kael'thas could read without additional data. Precision strike, multiple attack vectors, overwhelming force deployed quickly enough that the defenders never got a distress signal out. Your assignment, Mrelax continued, is to analyze the attack pattern and submit a defensive strategy that would have prevented this outcome. You have 4 days. The class erupted into activity. Cadets interfacing with their AIs, pulling data, running simulations. Maya Reeves sat in the back row, staring at the wreckage display, not moving. Kael'thas accessed the tactical data, started building his analysis. The attack was sophisticated, but not unprecedented. 3 assault ships, coordinated timing, exploited a gap in the sensor grid that shouldn't have existed. Someone had fed the Kresh intelligence about the station's defensive posture. An inside job. Probably. He glanced back at Reeves. She still hadn't moved. Her hands were flat on the desk. Her eyes locked on the display, showing the debris field where 47 people had died. Cadet Reeves, Mrelax called. Is there a problem? She didn't respond immediately. When she did speak, her voice sounded distant, like she was talking to herself rather than answering a question. The Kresh don't hit research stations, she said. Wrong target profile. Low value, high risk. They go after supply depots, manufacturing facilities, military assets. Things that matter to a guerrilla campaign. Your analysis is outdated, Mrelax said. The Remnant's operational doctrine has evolved. No. Reeves interrupted, and the entire class went silent because you didn't interrupt Professor Mrelax, veteran of 43 combat deployments and holder of the Valerian Medal of Supreme Sacrifice. She stood up, walked to the front of the class like she was in a dream, her manual interface projecting data onto the main display in that clumsy human way. Look at the target selection over the last 2 years, she said, her fingers moving across the holographic controls. 17 Kresh Remnant attacks. 14 were logistics targets. 2 were opportunity strikes on isolated patrol ships. Only this one was a research facility. The data populated the screen. Now look at what the station was researching. Her voice had changed. Gone cold. Focused. Kresh genetic patterns. Specifically, genetic markers that distinguish Kresh subspecies from each other. Kael'thas felt something click in his mind. The Kresh Remnant is a coalition of survivor groups, Reeves continued. They're unified by opposition to Valerian expansion, but internally they're fractured. Old clan loyalties, territorial disputes, ideological differences. The only thing holding them together is external threat. She pulled up the station's research logs, classified data she shouldn't have had access to. Kael'thas saw several other cadets stiffen as they realized she'd hacked Academy systems. 2 weeks before the attack, Reeves said, the station identified a genetic marker that could definitively prove which Kresh clan participated in the massacre of Valerian civilians on Thresh 4. The massacre that triggered the Valerian Empire's current military campaign against the Remnant. The room went very quiet. If that data became public, she said, her voice flat, mechanical, like she was reading a threat assessment rather than making an accusation, it would prove that only one Kresh clan was responsible for Thresh 4. Which means the Empire's war against the entire Remnant would lose its primary justification. Which means the coalition of clans would fracture. Some would negotiate peace. Others would splinter off. She turned to face the class, and Kael'thas saw something in her eyes he couldn't name. The Kresh didn't attack that station, Maya Reeves said. We did. The silence that followed could have crushed gravity. Professor Mrelax stared at her for a long moment. Then he closed the tactical display, locked down the classroom's external communications, and spoke very carefully. Cadet Reeves, you are suggesting that Valerian military forces staged an attack on a Valerian research facility to destroy evidence that would complicate our strategic position against the Kresh Remnant. Yes, sir. You understand that this accusation, if made public, would be considered treason. Yes, sir. You understand that you have no evidence beyond circumstantial analysis and speculation. I have the attack pattern, sir. Valerian precision. Valerian timing. Valerian intelligence about defensive posture. And I have the research data they destroyed, which I pulled from the backup server that apparently wasn't targeted because someone in Valerian intelligence didn't know the station had off-site redundancy. She said it like she was reporting the weather. Mrelax walked to the front of the class. His remaining arms were shaking. Kael'thas couldn't tell if it was rage or something else. You will delete that data, the professor said quietly. You will never speak of this analysis again. You will submit a standard defensive strategy proposal that addresses the scenario as presented. Do you understand, cadet? No, sir. No. I understand the order, Reeves said. I don't understand why we're pretending 47 researchers died in a pirate raid when they were murdered by their own military to hide evidence of a war crime that would undermine an unjust war. Kael'thas stopped breathing. You are dismissed, Mrelax said. You and I will discuss this privately. Maya Reeves picked up her primitive notebook, tucked her stylus behind her ear, and walked out of the classroom like she hadn't just accused the Valerian Empire of murdering its own people. The door sealed behind her. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Zixander said what they were all thinking. She's going to disappear. They're going to erase her, and we're going to forget she was ever here. Kael'thas thought about the human who'd run the zero-gravity course 60 times, who'd learned to navigate space through pure stubborn repetition, who'd climbed 400 ranking slots through nothing but refusal to quit. Maybe, he said, but he didn't believe it. Maya Reeves didn't disappear. She was placed on academic probation, pending an investigation into unauthorized access to classified systems. The official report said she demonstrated concerning judgment and inadequate respect for proper channels. The investigation concluded 3 days later with a formal reprimand and a note in her permanent record about the importance of following chain of command when addressing sensitive concerns. The tactical analysis assignment was quietly canceled. Professor Mrelax didn't return to teaching for 2 weeks. When he did, he never called on Maya Reeves again, but Kael'thas noticed he also never looked away when she was talking. The rankings updated at the end of week 23. Maya Reeves, 891st place. Kael'thas stared at the number for a long time. A jump of 554 slots. The largest single-term movement in Academy history. And still, nobody was paying attention. Still in the bottom half of the class. Still obviously outmatched. Still nothing. He pulled her personnel file. The public one anyone could access. Human. Age 23, standard years. Education. Basic colonial schooling on Hadley's world. Previous military experience. None. Reason for academy application. To serve. Then, he pulled the restricted file. The one that required his family's security clearance to access. Maya Reeves. Age 23. Survived the Kresh raid on Hadley's world at age 17. Sole survivor of the civilian detention facility where 2,847 colonists were executed as enemy combatants during the Dominion expansion. Reason for Academy application. To prevent what happened to my world from happening to others. Kael'thas closed the file. He thought about a 17-year-old girl watching everyone she knew get murdered. About 6 years of rebuilding a life from that. About deciding to apply to the galaxy's most prestigious military academy, even though you were physically, technologically, and intellectually inferior to every other species there. About spending 15 weeks failing basic zero-gravity maneuvers and not quitting. About looking at a tactical scenario and seeing the truth everyone else missed because you knew what it felt like when your own people's leadership decided your life was politically inconvenient. Maya Reeves wasn't trying to become the best cadet at the academy. She was trying to become someone who could stop what had been done to her from being done to someone else. And the academy, in its elegant sorting algorithm designed by the finest minds in the Valerian Empire, had classified her as nothing because she couldn't run a course as fast as a Valerian hatchling. Kael'thas pulled up his own tactical analysis project from week 12, the one about resource allocation in contested territory. Reread his conclusion. Saw how he'd optimized for efficiency, for speed, for minimal loss of assets. He'd gotten top marks. Maya Reeves had optimized for not letting anyone die. The terminal in front of him showed her current ranking. 891st. He started calculating. The Academy's graduation requirement was top 500. She had one term left, 17 weeks. She needed to jump 391 slots. 400 slots in a term was technically impossible. No one in Academy history had ever done it. But no one in Academy history had ever been Maya Reeves. Kael'thas made a decision he suspected might be the smartest or stupidest thing he'd ever done. He opened a private communication channel. Cadet Reeves. This is Cadet Kael'thas. I would like to offer you a study partnership for the remaining term. I believe we could learn from each other. The response came back 43 minutes later. Long enough that he thought she might refuse. Short enough that she'd clearly been thinking about it. I'm ranked 891st, Cadet Kael'thas. You're ranked 7th. What exactly do you think you're going to learn from me? He thought about that for a long time before answering. How to see what's actually happening instead of what I expect to see. How to keep trying when everything says you should quit. How to care about the people behind the tactical data. Another pause. Longer this time. When her response came, it was just 2 words. Okay. Deal. Kael'thas closed the communication and stared out the viewport at the 3 suns of Kesh Prime, wondering what exactly he'd just set in motion. Behind him, the Academy's elegant sorting algorithm updated its databases, tracking progress, identifying excellence, elevating those who deserve to rise, and completely missing the human in the back row who was about to break every rule it thought it understood. The study partnership started in the most awkward way possible. Kael'thas had reserved one of the private tactical rooms on Platform 3, the ones designed for advanced cadets working on classified scenario planning. Maya showed up 7 minutes late, carrying 3 physical books, a data pad that looked like it predated FTL travel, and a container of something that smelled like burned vegetation. Coffee, she said, catching his stare. It's a human thing. Helps with focus. It smells like you're drinking motor oil. Yeah, well, your nutritional supplements smell like someone died in a chemical plant. So we're even. She sat down across from him at the hollow table, and Kael'thas realized he had absolutely no idea how to begin this conversation. He was ranked 7th in the Academy. His family lineage included 3 fleet admirals and a planetary governor. He'd been bred, educated, and trained for leadership since before he could walk. Maya Reeves drank burned vegetation water and had learned zero-gravity maneuvering through sheer repetitive failure. So, she said, saving him from his own uncertainty. What do you actually want? Direct. He appreciated that. I want to understand how you think, Kael'thas said. Your tactical analysis in Venkat's class, the convoy scenario. It was wrong by every standard metric, but it worked better than the correct solution. It wasn't wrong. It was different. Exactly. He pulled up the scenario on the hollow table. Valerian tactical doctrine prioritizes efficiency. Optimal resource allocation. Minimal waste. It's worked for 4,000 years. Sure, against enemies who think like Valorians. She took a drink of her terrible-smelling coffee, and Kael'thas noticed her hands. They were scarred. Not training scars, old scars layered and faded. The kind you got from survival rather than simulation. The problem with optimal solutions, Maya said, is that they're predictable. If I can calculate the most efficient way to do something, so can the enemy. Which means the efficient solution is also the easiest to counter. So you deliberately choose suboptimal tactics. I choose unpredictable tactics. There's a difference. She leaned forward, her eyes tracking the holographic display like she was seeing something he wasn't. Look at the convoy scenario again. The optimal route has a 100% success rate if nothing goes wrong. But in actual combat, things always go wrong. So you're betting everything on a perfect execution. She manipulated the display with her clumsy manual interface, pulling up alternate routes. My solution has 7 different failure points, but any individual failure only costs me 10 to 15% of my objective. The optimal solution has 1 failure point that costs me everything. Kael'thas stared at the routes. He never thought of it that way. Valerian doctrine assumed competent execution because Valerian forces were competent. But if your forces weren't universally competent, If you had to account for error, for bad luck, for the chaos Maya had mentioned, then building in redundancy wasn't inefficient. It was realistic. You learned this on Hadley's World, he said. Her expression went flat. Not angry. Careful. I know about the Kresh raid, Kael'thas continued. I accessed your restricted file. I apologize for the invasion of privacy, but I needed to understand 6 years ago, Maya interrupted. Her voice had gone mechanical again. That same tone she'd used when accusing the Valerian military of murder. The Kresh remnant hit our colony. Civilian target, minimal strategic value. They took everyone they could capture to a detention facility outside the main settlement. 2,847 people. She took another drink of coffee. Her hands didn't shake. They told us we'd be used for prisoner exchange. That Valerian forces would negotiate for our release. We believed them for about 3 days. Then, they started executing us in groups of 50. Kael'thas felt his secondary arms curl involuntarily, a Valerian stress response he'd learned to suppress in public. I survived because I was small enough to hide in a ventilation shaft, Maya said. Listen to them kill everyone I knew. My parents, my sister, my teachers, the guy who ran the water reclamation plant and always told terrible jokes. All of them. Maya, they didn't kill us because we were strategically important. They killed us because we were politically convenient. The Kresh wanted to provoke Valerian retaliation, wanted to turn a border skirmish into a full war, because that's how you unite scattered clans under a common enemy. She looked at him. Her eyes were still brown, still unremarkable, and it worked. The Valerian Empire declared total war on the Kresh remnant, sent fleets, occupied systems, killed tens of thousands of Kresh civilians in retaliation. Everyone got what they wanted except the people who died. The tactical room felt very small. When I accessed the vestige station data, Maya continued, and saw the same pattern. Civilian researchers killed to hide evidence that would complicate a politically convenient war. I recognized it. Because I've lived through what happens when leadership decides people are more useful dead than alive. Kael'thas didn't know what to say to that. There were no words in Valerian diplomatic protocol for this kind of conversation. So, Maya said, her voice returning to something approximating normal. You wanted to know how I think. That's how I think. I assume everyone with power is willing to sacrifice anyone without power if it serves their interests. And I plan accordingly. She finished her coffee and set the container down with a soft clink. Your turn, she said. What do you want from this partnership that you couldn't get from any of the other top-ranked cadets? Kael'thas considered lying, considered framing this as academic curiosity or strategic interest. But Maya Reeves had just handed him her trauma like a tactical briefing, and he owed her honesty in return. I want to learn how to care, he said. She blinked. What? Valerian tactical training is exceptional. We can calculate optimal solutions to any military scenario. We can manage logistics for system-spanning campaigns. We can coordinate forces across multiple theaters with minimal losses. He pulled up his own academy record, let her see his scores. Perfect marks in every category that involved mathematical optimization or strategic calculation. But we don't train for the part where people die, Kael'thas said. We train for acceptable losses, calculated risk, strategic sacrifice, all the terminology that lets you make decisions about ending lives without having to think about the lives you're ending. Maya was watching him now with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. I've been preparing for military command my entire life, he continued. I can tell you the optimal number of casualties to achieve a strategic objective. I can calculate the break-even point where holding territory costs more than it's worth. I can make all those decisions perfectly. He closed his academy record. What I can't do is look at a scenario and see 2,847 people instead of a number. I can't think like someone who survived the consequences of optimal decision-making. And I think that's going to make me a terrible commander. The silence stretched between them. That's not nothing, Maya finally said. What? Knowing you have a blind spot. Most people go their whole lives not seeing what they can't see. She started unpacking her physical books, spreading them across the table like ancient artifacts. Okay, here's the deal. You teach me how to be efficient. I'll teach you how to be human. You realize I'm not actually human. Yeah, but you want to think like someone who gives a shit about people. Close enough. She pulled up a tactical scenario on the hollow table, one Kael'thas recognized from advanced command theory. This one, Maya said, defense of Station Meridian against overwhelming force. Standard Academy scenario. What's your solution? Kael'thas ran the calculations in his head. Évacuat non essentiel personnel. Establish defensive perimeter on decks 4 through 7. Hold for 6 hours while reinforcements arrive. Projected casualties, 23% of defensive forces. And that's optimal within acceptable parameters. Okay, now tell me about the non-essential personnel. What about them? Who are they? What do they do? Where do they evacuate to? Kael'thas pulled up the scenario details. Station support staff, maintenance workers, administrative personnel, civilian contractors. Approximately 400 individuals. Standard evacuation protocol would place them on transport ships to the nearest secure facility. Which is where? He checked. Outpost Keller. 16 hours away at maximum civilian transport speed. So while your defensive forces are fighting and dying to hold the station, Maya said, you've got 400 civilians in unarmed transports crawling through space for 16 hours. What happens if the enemy brought interdiction ships? Kael'thas felt something cold settle in his chest. The transports would be vulnerable. Vulnerable is a nice word. Dead is the accurate word. She manipulated the scenario, adding enemy force projections. If I'm attacking the station, I don't care about your defensive perimeter. I care about breaking your will to fight. So I let your transports launch, then I destroy them in view of the station. Make your defensive forces watch 400 people die while they sit safe behind their perimeter. The hollow table showed exactly what she was describing. It was mathematically sound, tactically devastating. So what's your solution? Kael'thas asked. Don't evacuate. Keep everyone on the station and spread them across all decks. The enemy can't use overwhelming force without risking civilian casualties, which complicates their tactical options if they're planning to occupy the station afterward. It also means my defensive forces are fighting to protect people right behind them instead of abstract objectives. That puts the civilians in direct danger. They're already in danger, Maya said. I'm just being honest about it instead of sending them away in a ship that becomes a flying coffin. Kael'thas stared at the scenario. Her solution violated every principle of Valerian tactical doctrine. It was messy, complicated, introduced dozens of variables that couldn't be optimized. It also would probably save more lives. This is why you're ranked 891st, he said quietly. Yeah, turns out the Academy doesn't reward you for caring about people who aren't supposed to matter. They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks. Kael'thas would bring tactical scenarios from the advanced courses. Maya would tear them apart, pointing out all the places where optimal solutions assume perfect execution and cooperative enemies. Then, she'd bring him real-world scenarios, case studies from human military history, conflicts where everything went wrong, battles won through improvisation rather than planning. This one, she said during their fourth session, pulling up something called the Battle of Midway. Human naval engagement from our pre-space era. The Earth nation called America was fighting the nation called Japan. America was outgunned, outmanned, had inferior technology. The holographic display showed primitive watercraft, actual ships that floated on liquid oceans using chemical propulsion. Barbaric technology. America won, Maya said, because they broke the Japanese communication codes and knew exactly when and where the attack was coming. Then, they set a trap using their last 3 functional carriers against Japan's 6. Signals intelligence, Kael'thas said. Standard reconnaissance. Sure, but look at the execution. She zoomed in on the battle timeline. The American torpedo bombers attacked first. All of them were destroyed. 100% casualties. Didn't land a single hit. That's catastrophic. That's the setup. The torpedo bombers forced the Japanese carriers to maneuver, broke their defensive formations, and pulled their fighter cover down to low altitude, which meant when the American dive bombers arrived 3 minutes later, there was nothing protecting the carriers. The holographic display showed the attack pattern. It was chaos, uncoordinated. Half the American forces had gotten lost and arrived late, and they'd sunk 4 Japanese carriers in 5 minutes. The torpedo bomber squadrons knew it was a suicide mission, Maya said. They attacked anyway because they understood their job wasn't to sink ships. Their job was to create an opening for the dive bombers. Acceptable losses in service of the objective. No, her voice went sharp. That's not what I'm showing you. Those pilots weren't numbers on a casualty report. They were people who made a choice. They flew into defensive fire knowing they were going to die because they believed it would save lives in the long run. She pulled up individual crew manifests. Names, photos, ages. Ensign George Gay, Maya said, highlighting one entry. Age 25. Only survivor of his squadron. Watched all his friends die, then hid in the ocean for 30 hours before rescue. He chose to be there. Kael'thas looked at the primitive human's image. Young, smiling, dead 6 decades before humanity even reached their own moon. This is what I don't understand, he said. Valerian tactical doctrine would never approve a plan with 100% projected casualties for a diversion. The math doesn't work. The math never works when you're measuring human lives, Maya said. That's the point. You can't optimize for bravery. You can't calculate the value of someone choosing to sacrifice themselves for a cause they believe in. All you can do is honor that choice by making it mean something. She closed the battle display. When you become a commander, she said, you're going to make decisions that get people killed. That's the job. What I'm trying to teach you is that those deaths aren't acceptable losses. They're people who trusted you to spend their lives wisely. Kael'thas sat with that for a long time. The Academy doesn't teach this, he finally said. The Academy teaches you how to win wars. I'm teaching you how to remember why wars matter. Week 29. The rankings updated. Maya Reeves, 623rd place. Zixandra noticed it during mess period. Her scales flashing colors Kael'thas had learned meant confusion mixed with irritation. The human jumped 268 slots, she said, loud enough that surrounding cadets turned to look. In 6 weeks. That's not possible. Apparently it is, Kael'thas said mildly. She's still failing physical conditioning. Still ranked bottom quartile in weapons proficiency. Her neuroplasticity scores are actually getting worse. Perhaps the ranking algorithm is weighting factors differently than you assume. Zixandra's scales went crimson. Are you helping her cheat? The question hung in the air. Several other cadets had stopped eating, listening. I'm studying with her, Kael'thas said. The same as any cadet might form a study partnership. Is there a regulation against that? There's a regulation against academic dishonesty. Then, file a complaint with the proctor board. I'm certain they'll investigate thoroughly and find that Cadet Reeves is submitting her own work that reflect her own strategic thinking, which happens to be more innovative than you're comfortable acknowledging. Zixandra left the mess hall radiating anger in 7 different wavelengths. Kael'thas finished his meal and noticed Professor Mrelax watching him from the faculty section. The old Drac warrior raised one remaining arm in what might have been a salute or a warning. Hard to tell. That night, Kael'thas received a private communication from his family's estate on Valor Prime. His father, unexpected and unwelcome in equal measure. Kael'thas, I understand you've formed an association with a human cadet. Nopriambid, Nopliasantrius. That was Admiral Kael'van's style. Treat every conversation like a tactical briefing. I'm studying with Cadet Reeves, yes. I'm told she accused the Valerian military of staging an attack on its own personnel. Word traveled fast. Unsurprising. His father had intelligence sources that made Academy gossip networks look primitive. She raised concerns about inconsistencies in the tactical data, Kael'thas said carefully. Those concerns were investigated and addressed through proper channels. Those concerns nearly triggered an internal investigation that would have exposed operational security protocols. The human got lucky that certain parties decided her accusations were too absurd to take seriously. Kael'thas felt his secondary arms curl. Or perhaps our accusations were too accurate to acknowledge without consequences. Silence on the line. The kind of silence that preceded either violence or revelation. "You're seventh in your class," his father finally said. "On track for a command position in the fleet within 5 years. Your association with a bottom-tier cadet who demonstrates questionable judgment reflects poorly on your own command potential." She's ranked 623rd now. She's climbed over 1,200 slots in 2 terms. She's still in the bottom half of the academy. Still obviously inferior to her peers. Still a political gesture rather than a legitimate officer candidate. "With respect, Father, I disagree. This isn't a debate, Kale Thas. I'm instructing you to end this study partnership before it damages your career prospects." "No." The silence this time was longer. "What did you say?" "I said no." Cadet Reeves is the most tactically innovative thinker I've encountered at the academy. She approaches problems from angles that Valerian doctrine doesn't acknowledge exist. I'm learning more from her than I've learned from any other instructor or cadet. She's making you soft. She's making me better. His father's image on the view screen was perfectly still. Admiral Calvan had commanded fleets in 3 major engagements, held territory against overwhelming odds, made decisions that killed thousands in service of millions. He was everything Kaeldaz was supposed to become. "When you graduate," his father said quietly, "you will be given command of ships and personnel. You will make tactical decisions that determine who lives and who dies. That responsibility requires clarity of thought uncluttered by emotional considerations. It requires understanding that the people under my command are people, not assets to be optimally allocated. Those people will die because of your decisions regardless. Better they die in service of clear objectives than muddy sentimentality." Kaeldaz thought about Maya Reeves hiding in a ventilation shaft while everyone she loved was executed for political convenience. Thought about Ensign George Gay choosing to fly into certain death because he believed it would matter. "I'm going to be a better commander than you," he said. His father's expression didn't change. "We'll see." The communication ended. Kaeldaz sat in his quarters, staring at the blank view screen for a long time. Then he pulled up the Academy's tactical scenario database and started building something new. Week 31 brought the Advanced Command Simulation, the Academy's final evaluation for senior cadets. A week-long exercise where you commanded a virtual fleet against enemy forces controlled by the Academy's tactical AI. Your decisions, your strategy, your responsibility. The scenarios were designed to be unwinnable. The point wasn't victory, it was seeing how you handled inevitable defeat. Did you preserve forces? Protect civilians? Achieve limited objectives before falling back? The Academy wanted to see your priorities when you couldn't have everything. Kaeldaz drew Scenario 7. Defend a colony world against a Kresh remnant invasion force with insufficient military assets. Standard no-win scenario. The optimal solution was to evacuate high-value personnel and abandon the colony to minimize total casualties. He'd run the calculations 100 times. There was no tactical path to victory. Maya Reeves drew Scenario 12. Protect a convoy of civilian refugees through hostile territory with limited escort forces. Another classic no-win. The optimal solution was to identify the most defensible route and accept that some transports would be lost to enemy interdiction. They sat together in the Tactical Command Center the night before the simulation began, reviewing their scenarios one last time. "You're going to lose the colony," Maya said, staring at his projection. "Yes. How many people?" "Approximately 40,000 civilians if I evacuate efficiently. Closer to 80,000 if I try to hold territory." "What if you don't evacuate?" Kaeldaz looked at her. "Then everyone dies. The Kresh have overwhelming force. I can delay them, but I can't stop them. But you can make them pay for every meter." "To what end?" "I'd be sacrificing my entire defensive force and all 80,000 civilians for no strategic gain." Maya leaned back in her chair, her terrible coffee going cold in front of her. "Here's a question. What happens to the Kresh forces after they take your colony?" "They consolidate and move to the next target. Standard occupation doctrine. So by evacuating, you preserve your forces, but you also let the enemy occupy territory without significant cost. They steamroll the colony and move on stronger than when they arrived. Yes, but what if instead, Maya interrupted, you turn the colony into the most expensive piece of real estate the Kresh remnant ever tried to take? Make them commit so many forces, take so many casualties, spend so much time that even when they win, they've lost momentum for their entire campaign. Kael'thas pulled up the tactical projection. That would require holding territory I can't hold, using defensive forces I don't have, and accepting casualties I'm not authorized to take. It would require convincing the civilians to fight. He stared at her. The scenario specifies civilian noncombatants. I can't arm untrained personnel and send them against military forces. You can if they volunteer. You can if you're honest with them about the odds and let them choose whether to run or stand. That's not a choice. That's asking them to commit suicide. That's asking them to decide what their home is worth. Maya's voice had gone very quiet. When a Kresh came to Hadley's world, nobody asked us if we wanted to fight. Nobody gave us the option to make our deaths mean something. We were just victims. Collateral damage. Numbers on a casualty report. She met his eyes. If someone had armed us, trained us, given us even the smallest chance to fight back, we would have taken it. Because dying on your feet is better than dying on your knees. Kael'thas thought about the ventilation shaft. The 2,847 people who never got a choice. The Academy will fail me, he said. Arming civilians violates every principle of Valerian tactical doctrine. Probably, I'll lose my ranking. Might not graduate. Maybe, my father will disown me. Maya smiled. It was a terrible smile, sharp and sad and absolutely certain. Yeah, but you'll know you did the right thing. Kael'thas looked at his scenario one more time. Saw the numbers. Saw the optimal solution. Saw all the places where Valerian tactical doctrine said there was only one acceptable answer. Then he saw the 80,000 people behind those numbers. Okay, he said, teach me how to arm civilians. They worked through the night, building a strategy that violated every Academy protocol. When a simulation began the next morning, Kael'thas was ready. He didn't evacuate the colony. He armed it. The Academy's tactical AI was not programmed for a civilian population that fought back. It recalculated its approach 17 times as Kael'thas' makeshift militia. Factory workers with hunting rifles, engineers with repurposed industrial equipment, teachers with improvised explosives, turned every street into a kill zone. The Kresh forces took the colony. It cost them 73% casualties and 19 days they didn't have. When the after-action review board convened, Professor Mrelax stared at Kael'thas' tactical report for a long time. You armed civilians, the old Drak warrior said flatly. Yes, sir. You converted an orderly evacuation into a protracted urban warfare scenario that resulted in the complete destruction of both the colony and your defensive forces. Yes, sir. You violated standing orders, exceeded your authority, and made decisions that would qualify as war crimes under Valerian military law. Yes, sir. Why? Kael'thas thought about how to answer that. Thought about optimal solutions and acceptable losses and all the ways the Academy had trained him to see people as numbers. Because 80,000 civilians deserve the chance to defend their home, he said. Because their deaths should cost the enemy something. Because I'm learning that the right tactical decision isn't always the one that minimizes casualties. And what about your own forces? The soldiers under your command who died in that prolonged engagement. They died protecting people instead of abandoning them. I think they'd choose that death over the alternative. Mrelax's scales rippled in an expression Kael'thas couldn't read. The review board whispered among themselves in their various languages. You failed the scenario, Mrelax finally said. You lost the colony, lost your forces, and achieved no strategic objectives. Your ranking in Advanced Command Simulation is the lowest in your class. Kael'thas felt his career dissolving. Yes, sir. You also, Mrelax continued, demonstrated the kind of tactical innovation and moral courage that makes someone worth following into combat. Your defensive strategy delayed the enemy by 17 days, which in the full campaign scenario allowed reinforcements to arrive and prevented the collapse of the entire defensive line. Wait, the simulation doesn't end when you lose the colony, Mrelax said. It continues for another 46 days across 12 additional scenarios. Your decision to make the Kresh pay for every meter cascaded through the entire campaign. Other commanders had time to reposition. Civilian evacuations that would have been overtaken reached safety. Supply lines that would have been interdicted remained secure. The old warrior stood, his remaining arms folded in the traditional pose of respect. You lost the battle and won the war, Cadet Kael'thas. That's the mark of someone who understands that tactical doctrine is a tool, not a religion. Kael'thas didn't know what to say. Your ranking for the simulation remains the lowest in your class, Mrelax continued. But I'm recommending you for accelerated command track upon graduation. The fleet needs officers who can think beyond optimal solutions. The review board adjourned. Kael'thas walked out of the command center in a daze. Maya was waiting outside, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, her terrible coffee in one hand and her ancient datapad in the other. How'd it go? She asked. I failed the scenario. He recommended me for command track. So you succeeded. My ranking is going to drop. Probably fall out of the top 10. But you did the right thing. Kael'thas slid down the wall to sit next to her. I'm learning to hate that phrase. Yeah, it doesn't get easier. They sat in silence for a while. Other cadets passed by, heading to their own simulations, their own impossible choices. My turn tomorrow, Maya said quietly. Convoy scenario. No way to save all the transports. What are you going to do? She took a drink of her coffee and made a face like it tasted as bad as it smelled. Something stupid, she said. Want to help me plan it? Kael'thas pulled up his datapad. Always. The rankings would update in 2 days. He'd probably drop to 15th or 20th. Maya might crack the top 500 if her convoy scenario went well. Neither of them cared anymore. They had more important things to learn. Maya's convoy scenario started at 0600 hours on the last day of the simulation period. Kael'thas watched from the observation deck as she took her position in the command chair, her hands resting on the manual controls because she still couldn't interface directly with the tactical systems. Primitive. Slow. Human. The scenario parameters loaded. 47 civilian transports carrying 23,000 refugees from a war zone. 3 escort frigates. Enemy interdiction forces blocking the most direct route to safety. Travel time to secure territory, 14 hours. Enemy response time, unknown. The Academy's tactical AI would throw everything at her. Pirates. Kresh remnant forces. Random equipment failures. Civilian panic. All the chaos that turned neat tactical plans into disasters. Standard doctrine. Identify the safest route, except that some transports wouldn't make it. Prioritize the majority over the minority. Maya stared at the tactical display for 30 seconds without moving. Then, she opened a channel to every ship in the convoy. This is Convoy Commander Reeves. Her voice echoed through the simulation space. We're 14 hours from safe territory with hostile forces in our path. Standard protocol says I should pick the route with the best survival probability and accept inevitable losses. She paused. Kael'thas could see her hands gripping the armrests. I'm not doing that, Maya continued. I'm not deciding which of you lives and which of you dies based on mathematical optimization. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask each transport to report its condition, propulsion capability, defensive systems, passenger capacity, everything. Then, we're going to build a route together that gives every single ship the best chance of survival. The simulation's communication board lit up like a star going nova. 47 transport captains, all trying to speak at once. Maya spent the next 40 minutes cataloging every ship's capabilities, every limitation, every passenger with special needs. She built a database of information the tactical AI wasn't designed to track. Then, she did something Kael'thas had never seen in an Academy simulation. She divided the convoy into 7 groups, not by speed or defensive capability, by vulnerability. Group 1, transports with full propulsion and defensive systems. Group 2, damaged propulsion but intact defenses. Group 3, intact propulsion but compromised shields. Groups 4 through 7, various combinations of degraded systems. Each group takes a different route, Maya announced. Fastest ships go the longest path to draw enemy attention. Damaged ships take the shorter but riskier corridors. We spread out, make the enemy commit to interdicting one group, and while they're busy, the others slip through. Zixandra, watching from the observation deck next to Kael'thas, made a choking sound. She's splitting her forces. That's suicide. That's unpredictable, Kael'thas said quietly. The simulation ran. The Academy's tactical AI did exactly what Maya predicted. Focused its interdiction forces on the largest, fastest group, because that's where optimal targeting algorithms said the highest value targets would be. Group 1 took heavy fire, lost 3 transports, but they were the ships with the best defenses, the ones that could take a hit and keep moving. While the AI was committed to that engagement, Groups 2 through 7 scattered across 6 different approach vectors. The AI recalculated, tried to split its forces to cover multiple routes. Couldn't. Not enough ships to effectively blockade 7 different paths simultaneously. Groups 2 and 3 made it through with minimal contact. Group 4 lost 2 transports to a random pirate encounter the AI threw in. Groups 5, 6, and 7 converged on a single corridor that was technically the most dangerous route, but was temporarily clear because the AI had committed everything to stopping Group 1. At hour 9, Maya made another decision that violated every protocol. She ordered her 3 escort frigates to abandon the convoy. Sir, her simulated executive officer protested. If we leave, the civilian transports will be undefended. They're already undefended, Maya said. 3 frigates can't protect 47 transports. But 3 frigates can hit the enemy's staging area and destroy their ability to launch additional interdiction ships. That's a suicide mission. That's a choice. I'm not ordering you to go. I'm asking for volunteers. In the simulation, the frigate crews volunteered. All of them. The 3 warships broke from the convoy and burned hard toward the enemy's staging facility, a converted mining station the AI was using as its operational base. They didn't make it, got intercepted by enemy patrol ships, and destroyed. But they got close enough to launch missiles. The enemy's staging facility went critical, lost its capacity to deploy additional forces. The remaining convoy transports had a clear run to safe territory. At hour 13, Maya's convoy crossed into secure space. 41 transports out of 47. 21,100 refugees out of 23,000. She lost 6 ships and all 3 escort frigates. The simulation ended. The observation deck was silent. Kael'thas watched Maya sit in the command chair, staring at the tactical display showing the 6 lost transports. Her hand was shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off, the weight of those deaths settling in. 1,900 people, she said to no one in particular. I killed 1,900 people. Professor Venkat's voice came through the observation deck speakers. Cadet Reeves, please report to the debriefing room. The debriefing room was packed. Not just the standard review board. Half the Academy's senior staff had shown up. Kael'thas spotted Admiral Shunvar, the commandant herself, standing in the back with her mandibles locked in an expression he'd learned meant intense focus. Maya walked in looking like she hadn't slept in 3 days. Her uniform was wrinkled. Her hair was a mess. She had a coffee stain on her collar that hadn't been there when the simulation started. She looked human. Fallible. Nothing. Professor Venkat gestured to the seat facing the review board. See, Kates. She sat. You lost 6 transports, Venkat began. 1,900 civilian casualties. All 3 of your military escort vessels destroyed. By conventional metrics, this is a failing performance. Maya didn't respond. just stared at her hands. However, Venkat continued. The Academy's tactical AI projects that using standard convoy doctrine, you would have lost between 14 and 18 transports on the optimal route. Casualty projections, 6,000 to 8,500 civilians. Her head came up. Your unorthodox strategy, splitting the convoy, using damaged vessels as decoys, sacrificing military assets in a raid on enemy staging facilities, achieved a 91% survival rate in a scenario designed for 60 to 70% survival at best. Venkat pulled up the tactical replay, showing all 7 convoy groups moving through their routes. The AI adapted faster than we've ever seen, he said. It identified your decoy patterns within the first hour. It recalculated interdiction priorities in real time. It threw every random variable in our database at your convoy. The replay showed the chaos. Ships breaking down. Pirates appearing from nowhere. Communication failures. Civilian panic. You responded to each crisis by treating it as an individual problem rather than adjusting your overall strategy. Venkat continued. When Group 4 encountered pirates, you didn't recall other groups to assist. You trusted that Group 4's commander could handle the situation while you maintained strategic coherence. I got people killed, Maya said quietly. Yes, you did. Command means making life and death decisions. The question is whether those deaths served a purpose. Venkat highlighted the 3 escort frigates, showed their suicide run on the enemy staging facility. These crews volunteered for a mission with 0 survival probability, he said. They understood that their sacrifice would save thousands of civilians. You could have refused. You could have kept them with the convoy. Why didn't you? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Because they asked to go, she finally said. Because they understood the tactical situation better than I did in that moment. Because taking away someone's choice to make their death mean something is worse than accepting that they're going to die. That's not standard doctrine. Standard doctrine gets people killed and calls it acceptable losses. I'm not interested in acceptable. I'm interested in honest. Admiral Shunvar stepped forward from the back of the room. The commandant of the entire academy, legendary warrior, architect of a dozen major Valerian victories. Cadet Reeves, she said, her mandibles clicking in a pattern Kael'thas had never heard before. In 400 years of academy history, no cadet has ever achieved a 91% survival rate in the convoy scenario. The previous record was 78%. Maya didn't react. Kael'thas realized she genuinely didn't understand what that meant. Your tactical approach violated 17 standing protocols, Shunvar continued. You split forces, abandoned defensive coherence, sacrificed military assets to protect civilians, delegated command authority to untrained transport captains, and made strategic decisions based on emotional rather than mathematical optimization. Yes, sir. You also demonstrated the most innovative tactical thinking I've seen in a century of military service. You identified that the Academy's AI thinks like a Valerian, optimizes for efficiency, targets high-value assets, assumes rational decision-making from opponents. Then, you deliberately did everything a rational commander wouldn't do. The Admiral walked closer, her massive frame dwarfing Maya's seated form. You weaponized unpredictability, Shunvar said. Turned your weakness, inferior technology, limited forces, human emotional decision-making, into a strategic advantage. The AI couldn't predict you because you don't think like any species it was programmed to simulate. She looked at the assembled review board. This is what humanity brings to galactic civilization, Shunvar said. Not superior technology. Not overwhelming force. Not even exceptional intelligence. What they bring is the absolute refusal to accept inevitable defeat as inevitable. The Admiral turned back to Maya. Your ranking in the Advanced Command Simulation is first in your class. Your overall Academy ranking has been adjusted to reflect your innovative strategic thinking and moral leadership. A holographic display appeared showing the updated rankings. Maya Reeves, 127th place. The room went absolutely silent. Kael'thas stopped breathing. A jump of 496 slots. in a single simulation. You are hereby invited to continue your studies in the Academy's Strategic Innovation Track, HFY said, a specialized program for cadets who demonstrate exceptional capability to think beyond conventional tactical doctrine. Only 5 cadets per year are selected. Maya stared at the ranking display like it was written in a language she didn't speak. I don't understand, she said. You've spent 2 years being nothing at this academy, HFY said. Failing physical trials, struggling with technology, ranking in the bottom half of every conventional metric. And, in the process, you've been teaching yourself how to win without the advantages everyone else takes for granted. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in what Kael'thas finally recognized as respect. That's not nothing, Cadet Reeves. That's the most dangerous kind of something the galaxy has ever seen. The news spread through the Academy like plasma fire. A human. A nothing. The charity case who couldn't run a zero-gravity course without tumbling. 127th in the Academy. Strategic Innovation Track. First place in Advanced Command Simulation. Impossible. Except it wasn't impossible. It was documented, recorded, validated by the Academy's own evaluation systems. Kael'thas found Maya 3 hours later in the same tactical room where they'd started their partnership. She was sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, that terrible coffee going cold next to her, staring at nothing. You did it, he said. I got 1,900 people killed. You saved 21,100. It's not the same math. Kael'thas slid down the wall to sit next to her. No, it's not. Command never is. They sat in silence for a while. Outside the viewport, the 3 sons of Kesh Prime were setting in sequence, painting the sky in colors that human eyes probably saw differently than Valerian ones. Your ranking dropped, Maya said finally. You're 14th now. I know, because you helped me. Because you wasted time studying with someone who was ranked 1,847th instead of focusing on your own advancement. I learned more from you than I learned from anyone else at this academy. You learned how to fail. I learned how to care about the people I'm going to lead, Kael'thas said. I learned that optimal solutions aren't always right solutions. I learned that sometimes the best tactical decision is the one that lets people choose their own deaths instead of having death chosen for them. Maya finally looked at him. Her eyes were red. Humans cried when they were overwhelmed, leaked salt water from their eyes like a biological malfunction of grief. I'm terrified, she said. Of what? Of what happens next. The academy is controlled environment. Training simulations. Nobody actually dies when I make the wrong call. But after graduation, you'll make real decisions that cost real lives, Kael'thas finished. And you'll carry those deaths with you forever, because that's what it means to be a commander who gives a shit about people. That doesn't get easier, does it? My father commanded a fleet action that killed 40,000 Kresh in a single day. I asked him once how he lived with that. He said he didn't think about them as people, just as enemy combatants, tactical obstacles, acceptable casualties. Kael'thas looked out at the setting suns. I used to think that was strength, he said. Now I think it's the coward's way out. It's easier to kill people when you don't see them as people. So what do? We remember. We carry it. We make sure every death means something. He stood up, offered her his primary hand. And we keep trying to be better than the people who came before us. Maya took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. You know what's funny? She said. What? 6 months ago, I thought the academy was going to break me. Thought I'd wash out in the first term because I couldn't keep up with species that were smarter, faster, stronger than humans. Thought I'd go home and spend the rest of my life knowing I wasn't good enough. And now? She smiled. It was a tired smile, beaten down and worn out, but it was real. Now I'm ranked 127th in the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy. Now I've got Valerian cadets studying my tactical strategies. Now the commandant thinks I'm dangerous. You are dangerous. Yeah. Her smile widened slightly. I really am. Graduation came 6 weeks later. The ceremony was held on Platform 1, the Grand Assembly Hall where 4,000 years of academy graduates had received their commissions. The architecture was designed to inspire, massive columns supporting a transparent dome that showed the stars, each column inscribed with the names of legendary commanders. 500 cadets graduated that year. The top performers received special recognition, assignments to prestigious positions, fast-track command opportunities. Kael'thas graduated 14th in his class. His father attended the ceremony. They didn't speak. Maya Reeves graduated 94th. She climbed another 33 slots in the final term through sheer stubborn refusal to stop improving. Her physical conditioning scores were still bottom quartile. Her technology integration was still abysmal. But her strategic thinking, her tactical innovation, her ability to see patterns that optimal algorithms missed, those had earned her a place in the Academy's top 100. When her name was called, something unexpected happened. The assembled cadets, 500 of the galaxy's finest military minds, representing 40 different species and cultures, stood up. All of them. Standing ovation for the human who'd been nothing, who'd tumbled through zero-gravity trials and failed weapons proficiency and ranked 1,847th out of 1,850 in her first term. Maya walked across the stage in her academy dress uniform, received her commission from Admiral Shunvar, and Kael'thas saw something in her face he'd never seen before. Pride. Not arrogance. Not superiority. Just the quiet certainty of someone who'd earned their place through blood and sweat and refusing to quit when everything said they should. The ceremony ended. Cadets dispersed to celebrate with their families, their mentors, their study partners. Kael'thas found Maya standing alone on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Where are they sending you?" he asked. "Frontier Patrol," she said. "Boring assignment. Probably because they don't trust me with anything important yet. Or because Frontier Patrol is where you encounter the unexpected, and you're better at handling the unexpected than anyone else they could send." "What about you?" "Tactical Planning Division. Fleet Headquarters. My father's old department." "That's what you wanted?" "That's what my family wanted. What I want is to use what you taught me to make sure the people under my command know they matter." Maya turned to face him. "Promise me something." "What?" "When you're making decisions that get people killed, and you will, because that's the job, promise me you'll remember their people. Not numbers. Not acceptable losses. People who trusted you to spend their lives wisely." Kael'thas thought about Ensign George Gay flying into certain death. About Maya hiding in a ventilation shaft while everyone she loved was executed. About 1,900 refugees who died so 21,100 could live. "I promise," he said. They stood together watching the stars for a while. Somewhere out there, wars were being fought. People were dying. Commanders were making impossible decisions about acceptable casualties and strategic sacrifices. And two graduates of the Valerian Imperial Academy, one who'd learned to care about people, one who'd learned to weaponize unpredictability, were about to step into that chaos. "You know what the galaxy is going to learn?" Maya said quietly. "What?" "That humanity doesn't quit. We don't optimize. We don't accept inevitable defeat. We look at impossible odds, and we figure out how to make impossible work." She smiled, and it was a dangerous smile, the kind that made Kael'thas understand why Admiral Shunvar had called her the most dangerous kind of something. "They thought I was nothing at the Academy," Maya said. "Everywhere else, I'm going to be a nightmare." Kael'thas believed her. 5 years later, the Battle of Kessler Station would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for decades. A Kresh remnant force, 3 battlecruisers, 7 frigates, overwhelming firepower, attacked a frontier research station with minimal defenses. The station commander, Captain Maya Reeves of the Terran Colonial Defense Force, had exactly 1 patrol ship, 23 security personnel, and 400 civilian researchers. Standard doctrine: evacuate and call for reinforcements. Captain Reeves didn't evacuate. She armed the civilians, turned the research station into a fortress, used the station's asteroid mining equipment as improvised weapons, converted laboratory chemicals into explosives, trained scientists to fight like soldiers. Then, she did something the Kresh didn't expect. She attacked. Her single patrol ship, the TCF Defiant, named after an old Earth vessel from a human entertainment program, burned hard toward the Kresh battlecruisers with every weapon armed and no regard for survival. The Kresh forces focused on the obvious threat, committed their interceptors to destroying the suicidal patrol ship. While they were busy, Maya launched 70 mining drones loaded with improvised explosives. Slow, primitive, easily detected by any competent sensor system. Except the Kresh sensors were focused on the patrol ship. The mining drones reached the battlecruisers and detonated. Didn't destroy them. Barely scratched their armor. But the explosions disrupted their sensor grids long enough for Maya's real attack to land. For torpedoes launched from hidden tubes in the station's asteroid shell, following trajectories that looked like debris until they were too close to intercept. 2 battlecruisers went critical. The 3rd retreated. Captain Reeves lost her patrol ship and 17 of her security personnel. She saved all 400 civilians and held Kessler Station until reinforcements arrived. The after-action report was forwarded to every major military command in the galaxy, not as a cautionary tale, as a case study in innovative tactics. Valerian Fleet Command added a note to their tactical database. When engaging human forces, assume standard doctrine does not apply. Humans beaponiza unpredictability. They turn weakness into advantage. They refuse to accept defeat as inevitable. Recommended response: overwhelming force deployed simultaneously or avoid engagement entirely. Asterisk: the note was flagged by Admiral Kael'thas, now serving as head of Valerian Tactical Planning Division. He read the report about Kessler Station 3 times. Then, he sent a private communication to Captain Reeves. You were right. You are a nightmare. Her response came back 6 hours later. Told you. Academy was just the warm-up. Kael'thas smiled. Somewhere in the Valerian Empire, military planners were realizing that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or numbers or even innovation. It was the absolute refusal to be nothing when everyone expected them to be. Maya Reeves had taught them that lesson at the Academy. Now she was teaching it to the entire galaxy. And the galaxy was learning to be afraid of what humanity could do when they stopped trying to fight like everyone else and started fighting like humans. Stubborn, unpredictable, absolutely, terrifyingly human.